They thought Earth was just another dead world, buried beneath the dust of its own mistakes. For centuries, no one had dared to return. Not after the wars, the collapse, the silence that followed. But now, the silence was being broken. A fleet of alien explorers, descendants of those who had once fled the dying planet, were coming home. Their mission was simple: recover what was left of humanity's legacy. But what they found waiting for them would change everything. The ship entered orbit quietly, its silver hull gleaming against the dim blue haze that still wrapped the planet. The crew stood at the observation deck, staring down at the place their ancestors once called home. The oceans were gray, the cities swallowed by forests, the sky streaked with strange storms. To them, Earth was more myth than memory, a story told to children about the world that birthed them, and then destroyed itself. Yet something about the planet didn't look right. Their scanners showed energy readings pulsing deep beneath the surface, patterns that shouldn't exist. The captain frowned, watching the lights dance across the console. "That's not just radiation," she whispered. "It's organized." The team prepared to descend, landing their craft near the ruins of what had once been a great city. Towers leaned like broken bones, roots wrapping around them like nature's revenge. The air shimmered with heat and static. As they stepped out, the silence hit them first, so thick it felt alive. One of the crew, a quiet engineer, brushed dust from a shattered street sign. "It's strange," he said softly. "The surface readings say no life, but the ground, it's moving." They all turned. Beneath their boots, the soil trembled, almost like it was breathing. A low hum began to echo through the ruins, growing stronger by the second. The captain ordered them back to the ship, but the sky was already changing, dark clouds twisting into shapes that looked almost watching. Their communication systems crackled, static bursting through the channels. Then a voice, old, human, and distorted, cut through the noise. "You shouldn't have come back." The words froze everyone in place. It wasn't a recording. It was speaking now. The engineer stumbled backward, looking at the scanners again. "There's something down there, something alive, and it knows we're here." The crew rushed toward the ship, but the ground split open, revealing a faint light beneath, a glow that pulsed like a heartbeat. The captain stared into it, her breath catching as faint human silhouettes began to rise from the dust. Not bodies, not ghosts, something else, something Earth itself had become. For the first time in centuries, humanity's home was awake, and it wasn't happy to see them. As the storm closed in around the landing site, the captain gave a single command, one that might have come too late. "Get us off this planet, now!" But deep below, the light spread wider, reaching for the surface, as if Earth itself was reclaiming what it once lost. The explorers had returned home, but home had other plans. The ship's engines roared, but something was holding it down. The landing struts trembled, metal grinding against unseen pressure. The captain gripped the edge of her console, her eyes flicking between the rising energy readings and the crew's terrified faces. The glow beneath the surface was spreading fast, tracing veins of light across the ground like molten rivers. Every pulse of it felt deliberate, rhythmic, almost like communication. The engineer shouted over the noise, "It's locking onto our systems! The ship's not responding!" Sparks rained from the ceiling as controls flickered on and off. The smell of burnt circuits filled the air. Outside, the storm thickened, wind howling like a warning from something ancient and aware. Then, without warning, the pressure lifted. The engines roared free, and the ship lurched upward. They broke through the storm and into the upper atmosphere, but no one spoke. The captain's knuckles were white against the controls. The glow below was still visible, faint but steady, like the planet was watching them leave. Once in orbit, silence returned. The crew drifted between relief and disbelief. They gathered in the main deck, faces pale in the dim light. The captain leaned forward. "What did we just wake up down there?" The scientist, older and cautious, hesitated before speaking. Earth wasn't supposed to have any functioning systems left. But that energy, it's not mechanical. It's something else. Maybe biological. "Biological?" the captain repeated, her voice low. He nodded slowly. "Or something that learned to mimic life." The words settled heavy in the air. For generations, their people had spoken of Earth's fall, the wars, the collapse, the desperate evacuation. It was said the planet had simply died. But what if it hadn't? What if it had changed? The engineer pulled up old files from the ship's archive, fragments of human history that had survived the Exodus. The screens showed cities once bright with life, oceans teeming with movement, voices laughing in the sunlight. Then the collapse, pollution, droughts, machines turning on their makers. Humanity had left, promising to one day return when Earth healed. But it seemed Earth had healed in its own way. The crew sat in silence, the hum of the ship their only comfort. One of them, a younger officer, stared out the viewport. "What if the planet remembers us?" she whispered. "What if it sees us as what destroyed it?" No one answered. Suddenly, a proximity alarm blared. Something was moving below them, fast. The sensors detected multiple heat signatures rising from the atmosphere, like fragments breaking free of the planet itself. The captain frowned. "Are those debris?" The scientist checked the readings. His face went pale. "No, they're tracking us." The objects were closing in, small, sharp, and glowing with the same light they'd seen beneath the surface. The crew scrambled, raising shields and arming defensive systems, but before they could react, one of the glowing fragments collided with the hull. The ship shuddered violently. For a brief moment, the captain saw it through the viewport, a shard of crystal-like matter pulsing with color, alive. Then it melted into the metal of the ship, vanishing completely. The lights flickered once more. "Status?" she demanded. The engineer looked terrified. "It's inside the ship!" Static hissed through the comms again, followed by that same voice, clearer now, closer. "You left us behind." Every screen on the ship turned white, symbols flickering in patterns none of them recognized. The scientist stared at the data streaming across the monitors. "These aren't random," he said quietly. "It's language. It's trying to talk to us." The captain's voice was barely above a whisper. "Or it's warning us." As the symbols rearranged into something resembling coordinates, the ship's navigation systems locked on automatically. The engines began to warm, preparing for a jump. Without any command from the crew, the captain reached for the manual override, but the ship didn't respond. It was moving on its own, guided by something that wanted them to see what waited below, something buried deep inside the planet, that wasn't finished with humanity yet. The ship moved without their control, engines humming with an eerie calm. The stars outside blurred into streaks, as if the vessel were being pulled by invisible strings. Every system on board was locked out. The crew could only watch as the coordinates on their screens changed, pointing them toward a location deep within Earth's shadowed hemisphere. No one spoke for several minutes. Fear had drained the color from their faces. The captain finally broke the silence, her voice steady but strained. "Whatever's doing this, it wants us to go there. We need to find out why." The scientist shook his head. "Captain, this isn't a request. It's a command. We're being summoned." Below them, Earth glowed faintly under its clouded atmosphere. From orbit, the planet looked peaceful, almost beautiful, but every sensor reading screamed danger. Strange electromagnetic waves pulsed from the surface like a heartbeat, each one growing stronger as they drew closer. In the lower deck, the engineer and the younger officer were trying to trace the source of the control override. The engineer had opened a panel, his hands trembling as he examined wires that were now covered in thin strands of metallic growth. This isn't our tech, he muttered. It's rewriting the ship's systems, like it's merging with us. The younger officer leaned closer, her eyes wide. It's alive? He didn't answer. He didn't have to. The slow pulse of light running through the ship's wiring said enough. Meanwhile, the scientist was piecing together fragments of the symbols that had appeared earlier. He compared them with ancient human data logs, old languages, and digital archives. These patterns, they're similar to old Earth signal transmissions, he said. It's almost like the planet learned to communicate through our own machines. The captain frowned. You're saying Earth evolved intelligence? Not in the way we understand it, he replied. Maybe not a mind like ours, but something aware, something that remembers. The ship broke through the cloud cover, descending over what used to be a continent. Below them stretched a vast crater, miles wide, filled with glowing structures that shimmered like crystal forests. The readings spiked so high that sensors began to fail one by one. Then they saw it. At the center of the crater, a towering formation pulsing with the same light that had entered their ship. The patterns on its surface shifted constantly, like veins beneath translucent skin. The captain whispered, "It's not just the planet. It's building something." Before anyone could respond, the voice returned, clearer than before, echoing through the comms and even through the ship's walls. You took life from this world. Now you will return it. The captain's hand hovered over the control panel, but the ship began to slow on its own. It was landing. The crew braced for impact, but the descent was soft, almost guided. The moment they touched down, the ship's power cut out completely. Darkness swallowed everything except for the soft blue glow seeping through the floor. Then came the sound, a low vibration that grew until it filled their chests. The engineer shouted, "It's scanning us!" Each of them froze as streams of light rose around them, wrapping their outlines like invisible threads. Their memories, images, voices, emotions flashed across the ship's dead monitors. Earth was reading them. The captain tried to stay calm. If it's intelligent, we can reason with it. But the scientist looked shaken. It's not listening. It's searching. Searching for what? The officer asked. He looked up slowly, his voice barely audible. For what we took when we left. The ground outside began to shift, the crystal formations bending and growing toward the ship. The light intensified until it blurred the landscape. Whatever humanity had left behind centuries ago was waking up, and it wanted something back. The light outside the ship grew so bright that the crew had to shield their eyes. The air shimmered with static, vibrating through the metal floor. It wasn't just energy anymore. It was emotion. The captain could feel it in her chest, a deep sorrow mixed with anger, as if the planet itself was mourning something long lost. The ship's hull began to hum in rhythm with the pulsing light. Panels along the walls lit up on their own, showing fragments of Earth's past, oceans turning black, cities burning, and the moment the last human ships fled the atmosphere, every image flickered like a memory being forced to the surface. The younger officer clutched her headset, whispering, "It's showing us what happened, like it wants us to remember." The scientist leaned over the console, his hands trembling. It's more than that. It's using our systems to reconstruct its history. It's showing us what it became after we left. Suddenly, the view outside shifted. The glowing formations in the crater began to twist, forming shapes that looked almost human. Towering figures of light stood motionless around the ship, their outlines flickering like ghosts caught between worlds. The engineer stumbled back. Those are people," he said, voice shaking. But they weren't. They were echoes, impressions of humanity burned into the planet itself. The captain stared at them, realization dawning. Earth didn't just die. It absorbed us. Every trace of what we were, our cities, our technology, our voices, it became part of it. A tremor rolled through the ground, stronger this time. The ship tilted, metal groaning under the strain. The energy readings shot off the scale. "It's destabilizing," the scientist shouted. "We need to get out of here now." But the ship wouldn't respond. Every control was frozen, the engines locked. The captain slammed her fist against the console. "Override manual control." The engineer tried, fingers flying over the switches, but the ship refused to move. Instead, the lights flickered again, and the same voice returned, echoing through the hull. "You left to save yourselves. Now, save what remains." The deck shook violently. Cracks began to form in the ground outside, glowing with molten light. Streams of energy surged upward, twisting around the crystalline figures. The crater was coming alive, as if Earth itself was awakening from centuries of sleep. The scientist's eyes widened. "It's drawing power from the core. If it keeps this up, it'll tear itself apart." The captain looked out at the chaos below, her mind racing. "Or it's trying to become something new," she whispered. The younger officer turned toward her. "Captain, what do we do?" For a moment, the captain couldn't answer. The ship was shaking so hard that loose tools and equipment crashed to the floor. The air buzzed with static, voices overlapping through the comms, thousands of voices, human and alien, all blending into one rising sound. Then, in the middle of the storm, the holographic figures began to move. They turned toward the ship, raising their hands in unison. A beam of light shot forward, piercing the hull and flooding the cabin with blinding brilliance. The crew covered their faces, but the light didn't burn. It felt. It was warm, heavy with emotion, as if the planet was reaching out. The scientist's voice cracked. "It's not attacking us. It's trying to connect." The captain hesitated, torn between fear and awe. "Connect to what?" "To us," he whispered. "To humanity." The ship's systems suddenly flared back to life, but the controls were no longer human. The interface was covered in shifting symbols. Part alien, part ancient Earth code. A new set of coordinates appeared, deep beneath the planet's surface. "Whatever it wants us to see," the captain said quietly. "It's down there." The ship began to descend again, faster than before, pulled by forces far beyond its engines. The light outside thickened into a storm, swallowing everything in white. And as the ship dove into the heart of the planet, the crew realized this wasn't just a return to Earth. It was a reckoning. The descent felt endless. The ship plunged through layers of cloud and molten mist, the light outside burning brighter than any sun. The controls were still out of reach, yet the vessel moved with precision, like it was being guided by an unseen hand. Every system pulsed with the same rhythmic glow they had seen before. Steady, alive, watching. The captain steadied herself as the deck rattled beneath her boots. "Status?" she called out, though she already knew no one truly had control anymore. The engineer checked the readings, sweat running down his temples. "We're heading straight toward the planet's core. The heat levels should have melted us by now, but it's like something's holding the temperature stable." "Something wants us alive," the scientist murmured, his eyes locked on the monitors. "But why?" The younger officer leaned toward the viewport, her voice barely a whisper. "Look." Outside, the molten landscape shifted, revealing massive structures hidden beneath the crust, rings of blackened towers stretching in perfect circles, glowing faintly at their edges. It wasn't natural. It looked built, human-built. The captain's breath caught. "That's impossible. No one ever came back here after the Exodus." "Unless," the scientist said slowly, "someone never left." The realization hit like a punch to the chest. The ancient myths spoke of a few who had refused to abandon Earth, choosing to stay behind when humanity fled. Over time, their existence became legend. The Keepers, people who had sworn to guard the planet until it healed. But no records ever proved they survived. Until now. As the ship descended further, the towers came alive, emitting deep vibrations that echoed through the hull. The comms crackled again, but this time the voice was different. Calmer, unmistakably human. "You shouldn't have come back," it said. "We warned them long ago." The captain froze. "Identify yourself," she demanded. Silence. Then, faintly, "You left us to die. Now you return to claim what you abandoned. Earth has no place for you anymore." The ship jolted as if struck by an unseen force. The lights dimmed, and every instrument went dark. When the emergency systems flickered back on, something had changed. The symbols on the screens were no longer alien or chaotic. They formed human language, one word repeated across every display. Rebirth. The scientist's face went pale. "It's merging human code with planetary signals. It's rewriting both." The captain's voice hardened. "Rewriting into what?" Before he could answer, the ship broke through the final layer of rock and entered a massive underground chamber. The scale was beyond comprehension, a glowing sphere at its center, suspended by streams of energy that reached out like veins into the surrounding structures. It pulsed in rhythm with their own ship's power core. The engineer stared in disbelief. "It's syncing with us." The voice returned, closer now, echoing through every wall. "Humanity created this world's end. We became its heart. Now it will live again, through you." The captain felt a cold dread sink in. "Through us?" The hull began to glow from within as threads of light spread across the interior, wrapping around control panels, crawling up the walls. The ship was fusing with the planet. The energy wasn't just connecting, it was consuming. The scientist shouted, "It's integrating our genetic signatures. It's trying to make us part of the system." "Shut it down!" the captain ordered. But nothing worked. The ship's systems had become unrecognizable, organic, breathing, pulsing with light. The crew's monitors filled with images of DNA strands, neural maps, and the flickering silhouettes of human faces, thousands of them, whispering. The engineer's voice broke. "Captain, it's using us to finish the process." The younger officer looked at her, eyes wide with horror. "It doesn't want to destroy us. It wants to become us." Outside the viewport, the sphere in the core opened like an eye, vast and blinding, staring straight at them. The pulse quickened until every light in the chamber beat in perfect sync with the crew's own hearts. And then the voice spoke one last time, calm and certain. "The new Earth begins now." The ship's walls began to dissolve into light, taking the crew with it. The light filled everything, every corner of the ship, every breath they took. It wasn't just blinding, it was consuming. The captain felt her body fade, her hands no longer solid but made of the same shimmering particles that surrounded her. The others were the same, faces dissolving into light, outlines breaking apart. Yet in that moment, she didn't feel pain. She felt connection. Every thought, every memory, every regret she'd ever buried was suddenly shared with the others and with the planet itself. She could see flashes not only of her own life, but of Earth's. Oceans boiling, forests turning to dust, and the last human voices crying out into a silent sky. Then, something new, an awakening. The soil pulsing with strange light. The planet learning to adapt, to remember. Earth had become alive, built from fragments of what humanity left behind. The scientist's voice echoed through the haze, sounding distant but clear. "It's not trying to destroy us. It's finishing what we started. It's bringing balance back." The captain's thoughts reached him, though no words left her mouth. "Balance? By taking us apart?" He answered in her mind. "Not apart. Together." The ship's core merged with the planet's energy sphere, and for a brief moment the crew saw everything. They saw the vast underground networks that connected every living and non-living thing. a pulse of life running through molten veins. The Earth wasn't just regrowing, it was rebuilding, using what little humanity had left as its blueprint. The younger officer's voice joined them, trembling. "Captain, look!" From the glowing horizon beyond the chamber, they saw shapes forming. Structures rising from the molten surface, tall and familiar. Cities, not made of steel or stone, but of living crystal, breathing with light. They weren't ruins reborn, they were something entirely new. "It's recreating civilization," the engineer whispered. "Us, but different." The captain could feel her consciousness slipping, like being pulled into a tide too vast to resist. For a second, she accepted it. The idea that maybe this was how humanity would survive, not as flesh and bone, but as part of something eternal. Then she heard another voice. Soft. Human. Her own. "No, this isn't life. It's surrender." The light around her pulsed, reacting to her defiance. The captain reached toward the flickering shape of the ship's console, her half-formed hand struggling to find solidity. If Earth wants balance, it has to remember what made us human. Choice. Summoning what little control remained, she focused her will on the ship's power core. The fusion system still hummed faintly beneath the layers of light. It was linked directly to the planet's heart now. One last manual override could trigger a shock strong enough to sever the connection. The others shouted through the shared consciousness, begging her not to do it, but she pressed on. "You said it wanted to live again. Let it. But not through us." She activated the override. The light screamed, a sound that wasn't sound at all, more like a surge of feeling so strong it split reality open. The chamber collapsed inward, and for a moment, everything went dark. When the captain opened her eyes, she was lying in a field of gray ash beneath a calm sky. The ship was gone. The others were gone. The world was silent again, but alive. The air was clean. The light was gentle. In the distance, something green shimmered, the first sprout of new growth breaking through the soil. She smiled weakly, understanding what had happened. The planet had survived. Humanity had given it one last chance. Then, as she turned her gaze upward, she saw a reflection in the clouds, a vast face formed from mist and light. It wasn't angry. It was watching, waiting. And then she heard the faint echo of her own voice, not from her lips, but from the sky itself. "You didn't destroy me, Captain. You became me." The wind shifted, carrying the sound of heartbeats across the horizon, millions of them, faint but growing. Earth had been reborn, and humanity was no longer gone. It was everywhere. The sky was quiet again, but it wasn't the same silence as before. It felt alive. Soft winds brushing over the gray soil, carrying a low hum that seemed to echo from the heart of the world. The captain stood slowly, her body still solid, though faint trails of light pulsed beneath her skin like threads connecting her to the planet. She took a deep breath. The air was fresh, untouched, almost young. Earth had changed, and so had she. In the distance, the first signs of renewal were taking shape. Small patches of green glowed faintly, spreading across the barren land. The air shimmered with faint motes of light, seeds of energy drifting down like dust. Each one that touched the ground sparked growth, tiny plants bursting through ash. The world that had been silent for centuries was beginning to breathe again. The captain walked toward one of the sprouting fields. Her reflection appeared faintly in the soil's sheen, but it wasn't just hers anymore. When she looked closer, she saw flickers of the others, the engineer, the scientist, the young officer, shimmering faintly beside her, their forms woven into the glow. They were gone, yet not lost. Somehow, they had become part of what Earth now was. She knelt and pressed her hand against the soil. Warmth spread through her fingers, and images flashed before her eyes, memories of her crew, their voices, their final thoughts before merging with the planet. They weren't trapped. They were at peace, their consciousness fused into the reborn earth, guiding it quietly. A faint breeze carried a familiar whisper. "You saved us." Tears welled in her eyes, though she didn't know if they were truly hers anymore. "No," she whispered. "We saved you." She looked up at the horizon, where the faint shapes of the crystal towers still glowed beneath the morning light. The structures stood tall and silent, like monuments to the past. They no longer pulsed with the violent energy of before. Now, they shimmered gently, alive yet calm, as if watching over the planet's new beginning. For a moment, she wondered if anyone else had survived. If other descendants of humanity out in the stars would ever find their way back to see what Earth had become. Would they recognize it? Would they understand that the world they left behind had not died, but transformed into something greater? The captain smiled faintly. "They'll come," she said softly to the wind. "And when they do, they'll see what we built together." The ground beneath her feet pulsed once, steady, rhythmic, like a heartbeat, and she realized it was the planet's way of answering. The connection between them was permanent now. Humanity wasn't gone. It had simply evolved, its essence woven into the very soil, the air, and the light. She stood in silence for a long time, watching the horizon brighten as the first sunbeams cut through the clouds. The warmth felt different, gentler, full of promise. The planet that had once punished its children had finally forgiven them. Taking one last look at the glowing landscape, she whispered, "Welcome back, Earth." As she walked toward the rising sun, her figure faded into the golden haze, dissolving like light returning to its source. The wind carried her last words through the fields of new life, whispering across the planet's surface like a quiet vow. The world had been broken, forgotten, and reborn. Humanity's story had ended, but its spirit had become eternal. And as the wind swept across the endless new horizon, a single voice, calm and familiar, echoed softly from the depths of the earth.